Alrighty, so welcome to this week's podcast of Circ HQ. We're gonna go ahead and get started on basically just updating everything we've done throughout the week and just kind of break it down as we go through everything. As many of you know, we've been working to essentially wrap up the operator as quickly as possible in terms of the remaining elements related to their customization, their attachment, and their progression. Now, over the course of the week, and last week, we've been hosting a lot of playtests, getting feedback on Discord, talking to people on Discord, and just trying to ascertain how things felt, where the progression was going, and also just taking documentation down in terms of things they potentially want to see in the future. Um, so, like, here, I'll bring up one of them. So, let's switch over my share screen. One of the things that got in and we were testing earlier over the week was just you'll notice that a lot more abilities are in. We're actually cooking a build right now that should be going out later tonight that will essentially have the remainder of the abilities on. And I'll show those in the course of just going over tonight. But essentially, we've been talking to people about the attribute points, the ability points, how much they cost, how many points you can allocate in each tree, potentially looking at other ideas later down the pipe. Phase 2, Phase 3, small little things we could do here and there to flesh out the gameplay, going back and forth with people. One of the things that we heard back consistently was that the progression was too fast in terms of the weapon XP, to the character XP, to the weapon proficiency level. Now, and what we basically went in and did, we've been working with the Patreons and some of the people that play test for us consistently on Discord, setting them builds and being like, what do you think of this progression tree? And they kept saying, like, increase it, like, make it more XP because I'm leveling out a character in 20 in one round. So I think we ended up on a number that was like 2 to 3 times the amount of XP just to get to level 20. And that's where we're going to be playing with going into tonight, going into next week, just to see how people feel about that and just kind of adjusting accordingly. Now, this is one of the sessions that we had earlier in the week of just stress testing the game, playing with people on Discord, and just seeing what kind of issues present themselves and just kind of taking down documentation and notes, having people write bug reports, and just testing out the cloak ability. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to check out the operators, but they have a huge tool set for being your RTS TPS hero in terms of like a Swiss Army knife of combat roles. And with the other abilities coming in, which I will show, the ability to heal units. So you can now take the ability to heal, switch, X and C. To switch to it, press Tab. If you want to basically just switch to it, like rotating left and right, and then being able to just go up to someone and heal them. And that works for RTS, and it worked for TPS equally. So now, if you're an operator in your squad or an operator that basically like you build an RTS, they can fill a role as a combat medic that maybe has a sniper rifle. So this allows you a lot more versatility in terms of how you tackle some situations on the fly. One of the other things that we got in and we kind of snuck in was the night vision again for RTS and TPS. Now in this version, it's only the TPS that we're showing, but right now as we speak, Derek is skinning the UI based off of the mock-ups that we showed earlier last week and this week. So you'll get a part of the UI going into today, and then you'll get the other part of the UI finished around Tuesday, Wednesday, worst case. Basically just reskinning and redoing the entire game's UI for RTS. We got into grenade throw, which me and Michael think the animation for throwing is absolute trash, but it conceptually works. So he's working up a backlog right now of going in and improving the RTS grenade throw and the operator grenade throw to not look like that. But you figure that's one of the things that we've been basically going through and doing. And then the welding tool was a big one this week. And this rounded out the end of the week for us in terms of being able to have an operator that can build and repair. Now, this was an early version. I have to show 2 GIFs. This was something that we showed yesterday just to show the proof of concept. And then I'll have another GIF I'll show in a second that will be like the more refined version. We're definitely going to have to add some kind of aim node or some kind of adjustment so that the upper torso adjusts to where you're aiming, because it just looks too stiff. Like if I go to this one, which was the visual improvement, you can see that basically like it looks better, but it's gonna need an aim node. An aim node basically allows you to like have the upper torso contour and move as you're looking around. And this also equally affects the RTS as well. And we were just testing to make sure everything works. You can also see at the bottom left right here, the RTS HUD that Derek's been implementing and getting situated going into basically the next couple of builds. So then that way you guys can kind of like get a feel for like the what do you call that? The proof of concept on the last Steam post, which I'll bring up right here. Was this one right here? So basically, as he's working on the construction UI and everything else of just well, not the construction UI, but the construction for the operator is one of the last items to finalize. He's been essentially just kind of going back and forth and recreating this UI in the editor, which is why you saw like parts of it implemented. He's working on like the formatting and the padding and how does it work when the screen's smaller and bigger. It's a bunch of like DPI related like adjustments and like auto adjustment stuff that you have to do as you're skinning a UI just to make sure that it dynamically adjusts the resolutions and that everything properly like has its pre-fitted box and space allocation. As you go from 4K to a 1K to like a 6K monitor or whatever, it scales uniformly. It doesn't like get deformed. So this is also what we're working towards right now. You can see that again, we have a little mock-up here that's been implemented and he's going through and implementing the functionality. We put the bulldozer back in for just being able to have the landscapes tool. We are working through a, so you're gonna notice that going over the course of the week, there's going to be the first UI will come in and then there's gonna be some last minute color palette changes that occur to unify the color scheme for like the engineer icon and the doctrines icon and some of these a little more vibrant, a little more color for these, not make them so gray and monotone. So that is something that we'll be working through going into Monday, Tuesday. To just round that out and add a little bit more depth there, make that pop a little bit more. And then one of the things that we'll be bleeding over going into next week is basically the group selection, is making it more like Company Heroes or StarCraft, where you have the preset ribbons. But there was just too much to have like the whole Excel sheet, you know, like dragging and all the other stuff. So we opted for a more simplistic, straightforward manner. And then one of the biggest things that we kept talking to people about on public Discord is just what is the zone's power? They want to see that when they click on a structure. They want to see what the structure is taking away from the zone. And just generally getting rid of all of those ugly, like, extra boxes that you would get when you clicked on some structures like the Civilian Zone Administration. It was overwhelming. So you figure, like, kind of filling that in the context of the details panel. So every time you click on a structure, you don't always get the pop-up. Just to, like, you just want to maybe, like, build a structure off of the civilian admin structure, and you don't want to have that pop-up just pop up and block your view. That was one thing that Winter sent out to do, is to, like, unify that and make it a little more streamlined. And here, I will bring up the other window. Ah, here they are. And then basically, you know, just kind of going through and just recreating, because here's the mock-up on the left, and this is the progress they have on the right. So they're just kind of going through and slowly but surely just kind of skidding it is what we call it, just to kind of bring it from a designs Photoshop file, Illustrator file, to actually live in the game and dynamic. So you can see the population bar is not going to be used. It'll just have like an NA for the time being until we get the pandemic in phase 3. But it's been populated and filled in, so you're at least able to like see where it's going to be, and we can fill out that space per se. One of the other things that we set out to do as well this week, and we didn't talk about this too heavily last week, is improving the hand positions of all guns, whether it be RTS or TPS, is that we wrote a lot of systems in the back end for being able to just have like more control on a per character basis in terms of like how their hands snap and conform to, you know, the different types of customization, not for just for the operators, but what comes with the actual RTS units. So you have a greater level of precision for the people that actually want to get into the meat and potatoes and actually be able to zoom in and see all the fine-tuned detail. They can. It's easier to record, easier to take pictures, and trying to cut down on the clipping that we had in Legacy, whether it be, you know, like the hand just kind of going through weird objects because it was the same animation reused on multiple rifles or whatever. We're still probably going to have some amount of clipping for like the back stock here and there. It's really hard to eliminate that on every variation of gun. But that's something that we could look to do once we get more access to mocap stuff and whatnot. That kind of concludes the operator stuff. It was a lot of back and forth to basically just kind of get everything situated. We're finally on the eve of being done with the operator, and all it needs now is just fine tuning and adjustment for the balance of the attachments and whatnot. So I'll really briefly show that, and then we're going to move on to the hub changes and what's going on with Alcatraz. So if I go to this guy right here, you'll notice that all the abilities that you guys are going to be getting tonight, let me just close that little pop up, is that, you have XP boost now in there. I just saw XP boost for like winters. You don't we're going to be, the new UI is going to show passives, it'll show positive passives and negative passives. So or dots, damage over time effects. So I'm going to show this really briefly so you guys have some context, and we'll get right back into what I'm talking about. Is that if I go to our mock-up, I can find an example. Just one moment. Let's see. Open that over there. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. There it is. Okay, so here's our mockup. And I don't know if we're going to keep the colors. I think, honestly, the colors green and red is too on the nose and too distracting. But basically, the idea is that you would have like a box, like XCOM approaches, and it would show you if you select a unit. If they have acid damage, it'd be a red, and it would show you the time left. If you have a green, which is like XP boost, some kind of modifier in the world that's affecting your unit, like being healed, then it would show on the green. So then that way, at a glance, you know what's affecting your units, how much time you have left, and just generally what's going on with your unit. And then, so that's the general idea there that we're working towards right now. And that's why we put XP boost in, because that needs to be in there from the ground floor. So then that way, when we get to the point of having those boosts or those modifiers being actively shown in RTS, it's very straightforward and very simple. You can see construction, which we added a leveling system. So this is one of the things that we talked about with some of the people that were playtesting over the week, is that one of the things that we were discussing with people when people were joining with on the public Discord is, how do you guys feel about if we were long-term is to build towards a direction of having certain abilities have levels, like in Battle for Middle-earth 2. So whether you're playing the RTS, whether you're playing the TPS, you can improve the efficiency of the night vision, the combat flare, the deploy gun, the medic, the snipe, increase damage, lower cooldowns, longer time lapse, being able to shoot while you're cloaked, like that kind of stuff. So it gives us the versatility to be able to kind of like build on the abilities per se. Derek, did you want to throw something in? I see you in the audience. Hello.
Hello. Was just popping in and to say hey, especially because I saw you were podcasting alone, and that's not the typical way to go things. So I decided I might as well pop in before I hit the hey.
Oh, okay. What's up? Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything you've been working on before you run away? I don't
know. You can see some of the progress. For example, inside the daily updates blog, on the left, you can see the tiny little preview of the RTS HUD widget redesign that I've been doing. You can see the extra wrappings around the minimap widget. I had to do a couple of updates, such as changing the zoom ratios a little bit, maximum amount you can zoom out, so that it can be zoomed out some more, because the minimap at the bottom left takes up a little bit less screen space. So I zoomed it out a little bit more, so it would still show you the full minimap while taking up that less screen space. But it's a bunch of little things like that while I've been updating the HUD elements so that they can function inside of their new locations.
That makes sense.
Yep. I also met with Michael a couple times over the week, and we've been tweaking some of the gunplay for the operator to fix up some things so that it feels better. He's had some very relevant feedback regarding recoil and other aspects in order to make it feel better. So that's hopefully going to feel better.
You want to talk about that? He was telling me about that yesterday on the phone.
Sure, I can talk about that a little bit. One of the examples was, he was testing it. We had a system where the recoil had a restoration feature that wasn't typical to regular shooters. Michael had been testing other games, and he was like, it feels weird. What I'm talking about, the recoil compensation, is after you stop shooting. Our game had a recoil cooldown setup where it would start trying to pull your aim back down for you a little bit while in operator mode. And until it finished that, your recoil would continue to be at its strongest level. Let's say you fired 5 shots in a row. That means your recoil would be at level 5, so to speak, if the recoil is scaled up per shot. If while the recoil was cooling down, as in it was pulling your aim back down from aiming upwards from the shots, it would still have that level 5, so to speak. And until it pulled it all the way back down, it would remain at that high level, meaning that even if you tap fired in order to do controlled bursts, it was broken. Not broken, but rather, if you tried to tap fire to do controlled burst, it wouldn't feel right like it would in other games. I showed him how that system was working. He had me remove part of that ad system so it would be just simpler, and it was already feeling a lot better just from that change. That's some of the stuff that we were working on with him as well. I showed him a bit. We also investigated some issues with how we were using the recoil graphs, and it should be set up a lot more consistently now in terms of how the recoil should feel when you're using the guns that he's updated so far. I'm not sure how much he's updated now, but I know that he was looking at the shotgun as well as the C18. Combined with some other fixes we made to the weapon attachments, in order to make this not only make the stats appear better onside the graph. I haven't gotten to fixing the recoil graph fully yet, but I have fixed up other things at the stats display inside of the attachments customization menu. So the sliders, not the sliders, but the little progress meters at the bottom left should be 100% accurate now. And plus, you can also preview things that even if you don't have access to unlocking them yet, if you highlight something that's not unlocked, you'll still be able to see the change that it affects. Fixed up a bug with the rounds per minute not being properly set by a magazine if it should change your fire rate. It's been just a bunch of little things here and there over the course of the week. Been meeting with them, and it's been quite productive in order to get the operator gunplay into a better place. The welding tool is also in a better spot now in terms of visuals. As you can see, if you look at the daily updates blog, I still need to make some other changes. Probably change the stance of the operator while they're using the welding tool. But it should look a lot better than it was the day before. So this week's been heavy on the ability system stuff, and then I've recently been focused on the RTS HUD widget updates. So taking that further for the RTS HUD widget updates, I'll probably be updating the group widgets to be integrated onto the right side of the minimap instead of appearing above the minimap. And that's probably where I'll be headed next workstation.
Because one of the biggest things to set out this week is to try and round out the operator from an RTS TPS standpoint. We have some bleed over going into Monday, Tuesday, as we've shown, because you figure there's still some stuff left on the wayside visually for the construction actor component for the operator implementation of it. To make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, we'll probably have to get like one more session going into Monday to make it to where there's an aim node potentially for when you're aiming the weld tool, so that it aims and contours like where you're actually looking physically, so it doesn't feel as stiff visually. But it's going to be interesting because this weekend will be the first time people can actually play it, see what they think, tell us if they have any suggestions or improvements, and then we'll react accordingly in terms of like, this feels kind of weird. Can you do this? Can you do that? Now, I don't know if I asked you, but I'm pretty sure you... Yeah. So you figure it's only building structures that RTS players have already put down, or it's only repairing, because we didn't get to actually building the blueprint system.
Correct. Right now, level 1 will let you assist in constructing the assault's field construct. So if someone set down sandbags and you have level 1 construction, that's the only thing you can do with level 1 construction while in operator mode. If you take it to level 2, because it took a little bit, but I added multiple level systems. So if you try to level up the construction ability here, you'll still be able to upgrade it again to take it to level 2.
Yeah, 2 right there.
See that? At level 2, it basically turns the operator into an engineer. So and when you're in operator mode and use the welding tool with level 2 construction, you can repair damaged structures as well as assist in constructing engineer things. So that allows you to also assist if walls are under attack or things like that.
So what I was gonna
for the actual construction holograms while you're inside of operator mode, I haven't gotten around to setting that up yet because I felt a bit pressed in order to try to get over to making the RTS HUD widget updates. Because we were holding off on that a little bit. Oh, I don't think you broke it. Or rather, I think I need to just set it up so that you can't iron sight while you have the tool out.
Yeah, there's going to be some weird bugs we're going to run to. Because, there's right there. Okay. Well, we'll have to fix that. But yeah, so that again, this literally just came in last night. So it's one of those things where there's going to be bugs with it. We'll work it through. We'll fix it going into Monday. And we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, my focus on the welding tool side of the construction ability was setting it up so that one ability had the different modes while in operator mode, updating backend stuff related to the ability system in order to support having a multi-pronged ability that can support completely different functionality when you're in operator mode versus RTS mode, such as pulling out a welding tool and then welding whatever you're wherever you're aiming at, and also doing some additional updates to the effects and replicating the effects, so that's because the abilities follow a regular pipeline of priming into aiming optionally, into activation, and then finally into the end stage. When something is played inside of that regular 4-stage pipeline, that can often result in that effect just replicating out naturally, because the other versions of the characters on the other people's computers are mimicking that same pipeline. But for the operator ability, it's basically entering a separate state as part of a secondary pipeline to the regular activation pipeline. So I added a modular little play ability call that allows you the ability system to just say, hey, I will play whatever effect is defined for this ability, and then inside the ability itself, the function itself can be overridden to just say, hey, if entry number 0 is this effect, entry number 1 is that effect or animation or sound. And for today, when I hooked up that animation so that when you are actually constructing something or welding something as the operator, as you can see in the daily updates blog, that just replicated it out naturally. It wasn't hard to actually change it up to play that animation rather than just playing the effect.
Okay.
So, ability basis, rather than trying to make everything bespoke on for what this ability, like rapid fire, make the entire timer system for that or something. I've been trying to design the ability system to be a bit more fundamentally customizable, so that going forward, the ideal is that level designers, Robert, other people as well who are not as familiar with the C++ of the system will still be able to make it inside of blueprints, and then theoretically in the future potentially mods for customizable abilities. No promises there, but it's being designed to be much more modular and customizable than what we used for the ability system in the previous legacy setup.
Yeah, because you figure it's day and night between some of the systems, all the systems that we've set up, from just the way the hands are positioned to the way we do attachments, the way we do operators, the way we do characters, the way we do movement, is that you figure we've been slowly but surely just kind of taking all that knowledge that we've learned and implementing it, and then making tweaks and improvements as new issues present themselves, because not everything is a direct shot from A to Z. We have to kind of make some deviations here of like, oh, we did this slightly different, so this might present itself differently, or that might happen, or this might happen. So just being reactionary of like, as things pop up, we're resolving them. And this was one of the big things we wanted to resolve from a design standpoint, of make sure that the operator, when your friends are playing as them, they're helping you on the ground, they don't feel like a liability. They can actually contribute to every aspect of gameplay. You don't have to yell at an RTS player, I need an engineer. If you spec into an engineer operator, you can just do the job yourself, or you can heal that person yourself by switching to an ability. So I think it's an incredible amount of versatility. I think really interesting, the combinations going into next week, to see what kind of feedback and response we get. Because going into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, I'm definitely going to be on the Discord quite a bit, talking to people, see what kind of feedback they give, and see if there's any other minor changes that need to occur for the operators before we go full swing into the UI, because there's maybe a day at most, half a day of the operator work, and then it's rounding out the UI that I showed you guys for next 2 or 3 days. Ideally, we're done with the UI around Wednesday, Thursday, with like the RTS and the options, the game screen, and the main menu. And then from there, we'll start on the operator UI, get it looking fleshed out and final, and that will round out next week with whatever bug fixes and other improvements we make to the core game. And then at that point, we can officially enter phase 2. So we're hoping to finish and get into phase 2 by next Friday, but it's just dependent on what feedback we get and just getting all the UI and all the other remaining elements in, so we can start the doctrines, because that's a big one, is the doctrine stuff. Did you want me to drop you down to the audience, Derek?
I'll actually probably call it for now. But
okay, cool. I appreciate it. Yeah, have a good night.
Take care.
Okay, so then at that point, the next thing I wanted to bring up was, hold on, let me bring that little baby up, is Alcatraz. So finally things have kind of calmed down in the Israel area. So you figure Dimitri is kind of in building out and just kind of working on the actual sizing, and then building out high poly cages for these areas, and he's basically making small little variations for them. So that way he can go in here, copy and paste them, and essentially just make small little alterations just to make all the jail cells and all that. That's currently what he's working on. And just putting in the skylights, putting in the actual, like double checking the actual sizing and the measurements, and making sure there's enough space in all the areas to accommodate players being able to get around, the campaign requirements that we have for like there's a tunnel network that goes down here. This hallway is definitely gonna have to be pulled out another 5 feet. Have you ever been to Alcatraz? It's a little bit wider. So as we're building out the interior, we're like, okay, we're definitely going to have to make some adjustments to the sides over here and just make the structure probably 5 feet, 3 feet wider in certain areas, pull this out or move some stuff around just to give it enough space in this area. But that's okay. That just kind of comes as we're just designing it. We're just kind of making tweaks based off of just like now that we've gotten the interior blocked out. There'll be some last minute changes that are going to come in. And then this is like the actual like little security screening room, the visitor room, and then the warden's office is over there, i.e. Wu's office from the book. And then actually the armory is up there for what they have in the real life Alcatraz. And then you have the actual jail cells, and you have small little detail to put up there of like where the guy that would walk along the rafters to like make sure everyone was sleeping. Is like all the other stuff. You have a little area where you'd like pull up a gun on a rope and like whatever. So yeah, like he has to kind of put those little small areas in. He's been filling out the library and detailing and putting in the pillars, putting in where the glass is going to be, and just kind of getting all this situated, getting this area blocked out, getting the sizing feeling right, and just kind of going through and just getting the hub situated. And then the last thing is the kitchen, which is going to be like, we might just close this off for the time being and then come back to this in the campaign, and then just close this off because it's not needed right now. As is like the second and third floor of this building over here and here. Like we're going to close off those sections and just come back to them as needed when we get to the actual campaign stuff for cutscenes or whatever. So that's kind of how it's looking in a nutshell for Alcatraz. It's coming along. A lot of micro detail, a lot of small assets, and just kind of going and just kind of using like 3D scans and other stuff like that in pictures to try and recreate these jail cells and just scan that into a program, have millions of polys, kind of like what Stalker did. And then you bring it in and you basically optimize it and you put on nanite and you essentially make it to where the area looks photorealistic and has a great amount of detail and everything else. So he's slowly but surely just kind of going through and just building that out. And you'll also notice that the windows will start to actually be filled in so you can actually see into the rooms and everything else. When it comes to what Efren's been doing, he's been setting up the canvas for me to put the climbing and the verticality of the co-op test map and bring it over to the Half Moon Bay map. We've learned a lot of things in terms of how to like, streamline it and change some things. I'm gonna have to program some custom systems going into Wednesday, so then that way I can make it a little more easier for artists to implement said mechanics. But I will show you how Half Moon Bane has been changing, and the people that have been playing it on the Patreon, and the people that have been playing it regularly with us on the public Discord to get some of the private builds we've been doing. Which again, anyone can come and join. If you see us in a channel, join, ask. We don't give a shit. You can join, even if it's just Patreons playing that have their special developer. They're playing like the raw builds. Don't care. Just join the channel, ask me. I'll give you a code. You're welcome to play with us. So I know we've got people over the week that are like, we can play. It's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, the more the merrier. So you figure once it loads up, I will show you what I'm talking about in terms of basically, and this will affect Pandemic because he's basically using this as an incubator to essentially go through and update all of the base underlying structures with these babies. These right here, these little hatches. So we don't have those ugly little boxes that I put together in the co-op test map. He's been going through every building, every asset in the entire game, and just kind of figuring out like where can I put it, what would make sense. You know, adding in staircases like this for you guys, so you guys have more verticality. You can move your snipers around in RTS. You can use the operators up there. You know, adding little doors, making them look better. Because I was telling him like we should look at other games and just kind of see if we could add some more like ways of getting around the structures, like ramps, like StarCraft. So you can introduce a little bit more verticality and give players a little bit more tools to kind of get around. And we're using this horde map as like our incubator for testing that. Like this map, you can come up here, and those aren't textured yet. He has to kind of go through and do all that. That's what he's working through his backlog. And then the idea is he was going to add some ramps or some kind of ways of getting down like here so you can get around all the roofs and like kind of go up here without having a new traversal system, which is just too much technical depth wise. So we're looking at like what StarCraft and other games do, where they have like those ramps and other objects. They can just get around and be able to go up here and build. Because that's one thing that we've heard for years from people is they want to build on the rooftops. You know, like Dying Light, where like you run into like the Nero camps, I think they're called, and they'll have like entire research labs and barracks and other stuff up there because they knew it was the safest area out of like the beaten path to just kind of build these little bases. So if you've been like, yeah, you'll notice little pop-ups, and the current build on Steam is like a week old, I think, give or take. So like you figure he's just kind of going through and just kind of getting all these situated. I think he'll be done roughly in another day or two. We're just updating a lot of the assets. This is a big chunk of the pandemic map assets. So they're about a quarter, I would say. So you figure like there's another like two-thirds, give or take, with some change that he has to go through and update when we get to redoing the pandemic and converting that all over. But like he had a little gazebo here. That was a little nice. So that was a cool little technical thing he's been doing just to kind of flesh it out and get everything to the point where we're happy where we want the gameplay to be. Where it's like, yeah, like we went the design choice over the course of the week of just talking to people and figuring out that, like, we had the old co-op test map, or just sorry, the Half Moon Bay alliteration. It was confusing. People didn't know where to go. There were too many objectives. It wasn't very clearly choreographed. So we just kind of talked to people and worked through a bunch of ideas on Discord. We were having playtests every other week. Sorry, not every other fucking day. Sometimes every 3 to 5 hours. I'd be like, hey, I'll be back in 3 to 5 hours. If you guys are going to be here, I'll run another playtest. You guys are welcome to just jump in, share your feedback, and then I'll be back in 3 to 5 more hours to do some of the changes you guys have, like, you know, suggested or test. Because you figure what we kind of drilled down on is having more of a lane approach, where they push down this lane, this corridor, like in Battlefield per se. And one of the other things that we were talking about Krieg, about making some maps from like the Men of War, like something inspired by the Men of War mod, the zombie one, where we have like fixed defense points where you like defend like 1 or 2 lanes and a little bit smaller. So we have a little more focus. So that was something I was going to throw out here. It's something that Krieg's been trying to like whisper in my ear because he does modding. And he was like, if you give me access to your SDK, I can play around and maybe we can, you know, see if we can come up with some very basic, you know, like, I forget the mods, like Men of War 2 Assault Squad. It's this really, really popular zombie mod that he was showing me. And he was like, I could maybe come up with some ideas like this, you know, and see if people like it. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. We'll talk more about that. I forget its name. If someone remembers the name and can tell me in the chat, that'd be great. I'm like drawing a blank right now. But you figure it's one of those things where like I'm totally keen to kind of experiment. Because one of the things that I was talking to people about on Discord is like they want the ability to build some units on the fly the moment you start. So you don't have to rush to build a barracks and the 1 minute countdown that we had. So as a compromise, because we had so many people, like we would run like full on squads of like RTS cats and operators. They'd be paired together and we'd have like, okay, you 3 operators are with that RTS and you take the north side of the warehouse. And then team B is taking the south side of the warehouse. And then we would share units and communicate and collaborate and all that. And one of the things that I kept hearing is like Silent Song and Phoenix. They go crazy on the operator. You know, that's like their bread and butter. That's what they've been playing predominantly because they love it. They want to try it. They want to play it more. They want to level up their characters and give us feedback. So one of the things that we did was make it to where we made the LCAC a barracks in this horde map. And that was one of the beautiful parts of the rebuild. Took less than 2 minutes to make the LCAC build units and basically be able to do whatever the hell we want. We can have it heal, we could have it drop ammo, we could have it recruit units, you could eat like anything we wanted. And we were like, okay, we'll allow the LCAC as like a mobile, technically it's not mobile because it doesn't move right now. It's basically like a building prefab, but you can set rally points. But we wanted to give players an easy way of being able to build at least some starting operators, some starting engineers if they somehow lose them. The LCAC can be destroyed in the first or second wave if you're not protecting it. So it's kind of like a 1 to 2 wave starter pack for you to just kind of get yourself in there kind of maybe get 1 or 2 operators if you really want them from the RTS, or your friends are nagging you. We need a barracks. I need to get 1 operator in, which happens in every freaking game. But we get 1 guy that's like, I'm going operator. Can I please use the 6K? Fine, go, do your thing. And keep in mind, going into Monday, Tuesday, operators are going to have dynamic pricing based off of the attachments, the character weapon, and the weapon level. So it's going to look at everything, and it's going to dynamically adjust their price based off of what we deem how combat effective they are. So like if you take a lot of utility skills or passive skills, the price isn't going to be high. But if it's a cloak or a grenade, that will theoretically increase the price a little bit. So that's something we're going to be experimenting with as one of the last line items going into Monday. So that way every operator, you start out on operators like 1 or 2K. Like new operators are cheap. It's when you build their proficiency, when you level them up, whether it be in RTS or TPS, is when they start to incur that depth, that cost, the startup cost to get them in. So losing them is actually a big deal, and we haven't per se sat down and set up the ceiling. It might be as high as 20K in some cases for like high end, like best of the best, every attachment, all the good stuff. It might go as high as that, and fully leveled up on the attribute points. So it's something that we're going to be basically leading into going Monday, and then you figure we'll definitely be getting y'all's feedback and adjusting accordingly based off of the perceived value of like, is it worth it? Is it too high? Is this being dynamically generated too much? X, Y, and Z. Because I was talking to Krieg last week, and he was like, you have no idea what the fuck you just did. I don't have any limit on operators. I'm not even building assaults. I'm not even building engineers. I'm not even building medics. I'm just going to make 40 operators. I just buy them and literally just level them up and use them as my builders, my medics, my assaults, or whatever, because they could do all that. And he was like, I think you might need to limit this in the future. And I was like, shit. Well, let's see how it plays out. Let's see how the dynamic pricing kind of balances things, and we'll see how people kind of feel about it. And then we'll go from there. I think it's fine. I think that as long as we have some kind of dynamic pricing, and like each guy takes it 1 pop anyway, but you figure the pricing should be some kind of deterrent or balancing there, so you can't just bring in your level 20 fully decked out RTS hero and then be like, haha, I win, GG, because they're not broken. Like, they're still going to get wrecked if they get surrounded by enemies. And one of the beautiful parts is you can see this gorgeous UI that Derek's been working on, basically skinning it and getting it all implemented. Now, some elements are not in their final positions, so night vision's in. And some of them, again, like I mentioned, are going to be changing going into Monday. We just wanted to give you guys something to play with and to get your all's feedback. Definitely the bulldozer tool is not hooked up. Okay, let me see something. Oh, it is. It doesn't work in slow-mo. I forgot. That's a time dilation bug we have to work out. That's a low priority bug that we have to kind of get fixuate. That's one of the things that I want to fix before the end of phase 1. The small little stuff like that. That's like, it's annoying, but it's not like mission critical for us to get on top of all of the major line items. So just be aware that's something that we're working on going into, like, I'll be working on, because Derek's already focused on UI. I'm working on bugs, quality of life, and small little changes here and there, just to kind of flesh everything out and just make sure everything's firing on all cylinders. Because I'll give you a couple of examples. As I've been playing with people on the Discord, I've been noticing issues like they get stuck on these police cars. They get stuck on little bags. And those were issues of the pandemic. These assets were brought over, and now that we're on a smaller map, and we've been like kind of like really laser focusing the assets and kind of playing smaller maps where you like, yeah, it's like, oh wait, this police car has really weird collision. It wasn't the navigation or the pathfinding. It was because there was a stream of green that was building through here, and it would only happen sometimes. So it's one of those things where, like, we went back and audited this object's collision. We went back and checked different bags and different things around the level, and it also showed us a problem with some of the nav queries and some of the settings that we had in Legacy, where, like, if you give a move order here to here, like I think about 2 weeks ago when we had a public build, giving a move order over here, they would, no, I lie. If you give a move order from right here, and you did it to like right here, they'd give up and just stop right here. We fixed that. Because you figure, and this is a good little, like I keep saying this, but this is a good incubator for pandemic because it allows us to slowly, surely just kind of build on bigger maps, like this Horde map, which is a quarter, if not, well, it's a quarter of the current map. It's like nothing compared to like the new map. But it allows us to stress test the systems. Because one of the things that I talked about earlier in the week was the landscape system and doing a lazy initialization system. Lazy means that you don't try and front load and register every single landscapeable in the beginning on the first frame. You don't try and stagger it out over frames because then you're gonna flood out the host's computer. And it's a listen server architectural system. So regardless, this is only being registered or ran on the server because it's server authoritative, which means the server is the one that determines what happens and when it happens. But like this. Like when I bring up the actual like tool, it registered it, removed it, and deleted it in that moment instead of like, oh, I just loaded in. I gotta register 10,000 items in one frame. Let's go. No. So that was one of the things that on this map we were stress testing and doing for the last 2 weeks in secret. Is like, okay, if we actually do all that in one frame, what kind of cost are we looking at? What are the performance hits on the CPU, on the hard drive, on the RAM? You know, not they on your video cards. Here it's all just purely processing, all like that. But that was one of those small, minute changes that we did behind the scenes because we didn't have to worry about that without co-op. Without co-op, we could basically just do it staggered over time. But the host, it was just basically we have to make sure that we keep the cost as low as possible so you don't get jitter, rubber banding, other stuff like that. Because when the host starts to get choked out, everyone feels it. So it was one of those things where we were like, okay, like we need to really up the ante in terms of how we are building some of these systems. I think my operator died. Yeah, she's dead. Big dead. And just kind of learning from some of the ways that we did it from previously and figuring out like more smarter, more intelligent ways of doing processes. They're still fucked. That was one of the other things that we did is we decreased the difficulty. The Krieg difficulty, the Krieg, what is it called? The Krieg contingency is dead. Like literally, I got so many people that were DMing me on Discord, DMing me on like the public channel, on YouTube. They were like, this is too fucking hard. I can't beat it. I can't get past the second wave. So we were like, okay, fine. We're gonna cut the difficulty. We're gonna lower the health of the infected. We're gonna make some really quick sweeping changes just to make it a little bit more forgiving because it was bad. People were getting like wrecked and it was like nobody was able to get that far in the game. And even with the combat AI not being as sophisticated as I'd like for the infected, they were steamrolling people. I mean, they took out the warehouse, they took out my starting garrison, and they took out the LCAC, and now they're headed for the next objective here, which is the regional command. And one of the other cool things that we put in, I didn't really touch upon this last week, was that now it warns you, okay, you've lost the zone, you got a minute. Leave the zone or you're going to start taking damage because they're going to put up gas towers. So if you're still in there, when it goes red, that's on you. Now, one of the things that I want to do going into early next week is add some audio visual cues. Maybe get Winter to do some dialogue for us or get someone else to do some quick little throwaway dialogue of like the zone has collapsed. All Circ personnel evacuate to the next zone, whatever. And I'll have my writer come up with something. And then that way, it basically would go off of like a local 2D. We could put some loudspeakers in here and then just have it play. And then that would give the retreat order, the Circ, to fall back from Ironworks to a Bayfront. And then vice versa. So as you lose these fronts, you're being pushed back. One of the other changes that we did was we also made the change where it no longer said these areas were infected, because I think Quibbly and a couple other people brought it to my attention. It was kind of weird that everything just said infected before they got there. So we just put contested, like somebody else is dealing with it. It's an active war zone. That's not your problem. Your problem is right now just worrying about that active front. And then you can see the gas towers came up. And then you're going to start seeing like the infection growth start like growing out, like well the VFX. So the Niagara effect is going to expand and spread out, and we'll build on this system going into the pandemic. Right now, it's just purely visual. These aren't applying damage to you. The zone itself is. And then, like I said, transitional. We're doing things in phases. When we get the pandemic, these will become actual gameplay elements that you can destroy. Right now, they just lent the choreograph to a player. Hey, maybe I shouldn't go in the red zone. I played Legacy. I know gas towers are bad for me. They just took out that one. And then moving on to the next one. 1 minute. And then basically right now, the remaining, yeah, you can see them right now. They're moving to the next objective. to destroy the radar. Now, one of the other pieces of feedback that we got from people was that it was like a goddamn train. You ever play Guild Wars 2? And you would like run around and do like the mobs, and you would like have that train that you would run around to get XP. It was bad. Like in some cases, they would take ironworks, then they would train all the way over and steamroll you before you had a chance to secure a bayfront. And on top of that, they would start spawning in a box immediately around you, even as your units were retreating between zones. That was garbage. So one of the things that I set out to do, regardless of talking to people, was making it to where while that zone is collapsing, they're not allowed to use the forward spawners because they haven't moved up. They haven't set up their defenses. You're not entrenched yet. So the idea is once that hits 40, if you start killing the infected, like until it's 40, they're going to spawn over here. And then the moment it's not 40, they're going to spawn around the border of the zone and then charge you in this compound. And if I'll bring up the recording from the other day. I don't know if you guys all watch our YouTube, but it was actually pretty fun when we were playing it. Let me bring it up. Hold on. Let me go to you. Boom. And let me see if I can fast forward to it. That area is so sweaty. Like even with the lower difficulty, because we were doing it from a testing standpoint of seeing like, okay, how is everything feeling? Is the AI working? If you fall back, are they spawning in the right locations? So the people that are on Discord, God rest their soul, because they had to deal with me for fucking 8 hours to be like, hey, can we intentionally lose this zone? I need to see what happens exactly to the moment. Well, I'm not even playing the game. They're playing it. Like 6 guys are playing in the room, and I'm just taking down notes, talking to them. And we're like, okay, we need to lose this zone in the next 10 minutes because we need to fall back to the next zone, see how their AI adapts, see how they're spawning, and just kind of go from there. Let me see if I can find it. It might not have been this recording because there were some sessions where we were like, okay, let's just see how long we can hold. Yeah, it was right here. Where we were like, we're doing too good. We need the Juggernaut in. We desperately need the Juggernaut in like goddamn yesterday, because that's going to be like, it gets to a point where it's just literally just zerging. And they need more strategy, they need more tactics, they need more versatility in their tool set. Like you have all of your tools that you bring to the fold with your variations of units. But it's something that I've been talking about with the guys on Discord, is that we need to get to the point in phase 2 where honestly, like Doctrines for Derek, Juggernaut for me. Where I'm like, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 days just bringing in the Juggernaut, adding his slam, his charge, his jumping abilities. I get him in there so he's actually like the charger, because he's basically a charger from like Helldivers, if you think about it, in the archetype of how they're supposed to, their role. They're supposed to be a siege breaker. They're supposed to direct your attention towards them. They're a brute. So if we had one of those, a simple example would have been that I was explaining to them, they would start somewhere over here and then just charge right through that line, destroy these Hescos, destroy those those thingy Jersey dividers, and probably take out 2 turrets. If you don't immediately kill him in the charge up, or if you don't kill him on the charge up, and then he just slams into your defenses and ragdolls. So it comes down to those decision making moments where if you're not paying attention, if you're not actually like looking and seeing what's going on, your defenses will fold, you will die, and then you'll basically have to retreat or lick your wounds and try and salvage your base. So you can see at this point, we pulled our units out. The Juggernauts were doing their thing. They were blowing up. They were destroying our defenses. We're just stress testing and seeing how everything works. Yes, I know there's a performance regression. I'm working on that as well going into this week. Again, I'm working on bugs. I'm working on the performance issues. I'm working on some network optimization that needs to happen. And then I am just fixing like horde mode bugs, like things that happen wrong here. But on top of that, also working on like the bugs and crashes you guys have been reporting on the Discord forums, and no one really posts on Steam. So if you do post on Steam, I'll be looking at those. Like Steam's been kind of dead for bug reports. I think it's predominantly been Discord, which is what I thought it was kind of roll out to be, because I don't know, people don't really report bugs on Steam as much as aggressively they do on Discord. It's always historically been that way for us. But you figure, like, you can see their defenses are folding, they're destroying everything. And And yeah, I'll mention it one more time. When the moment Dimitri's free from the hub, I'll have him model a better drone for the operator, the RTS drones, so we can actually, because we have to get the doctrines. When we add that, we got to add helicopters back in. That scout drone is going back to being a scout drone, and we'll get like a quadcopter or something that's smaller that has like a light signature below it, so you can see it at nighttime and at daytime. And yes, we're gonna have input bindings, and we're gonna have all the gameplay bindings going into next week. That's why Derek has been, a busy bee, like going in and doing this at the bottom left. That was like what, 3 or 4 hours to get this area down here. Another 3 or 4 hours, it'll be done. Because he already sent some adjustments and some tweaks off to the UI artists and Winters. They need to make some adjustments and concessions here and there in terms of the visual design and how you translate from concept to implementation in game design. Because it's like character modeling. When you see like Yennefer or other people like that, concept is completely different than character modeling because the realities of design are different and the approaches are different every time. So it's one of those things where we're kind of working through that and getting all that situated. So Monday, Tuesday, half operator, half the UI. He'll round out the rest of the UI, and then he'll start on the options screen and get rid of this monstrosity, get rid of this piece of shit, and get rid of the online tab. Like, he'll just go through and skin everything so it looks like a real professional game and not like a dirty, ugly prototype. Because that's one of the biggest things leaving phase 1 is to have that level of polish and that kind of finish. So as we go into phase 2, there's no take backsies, we're done. So like you figure, right now, Doctrines is grayed out, great. We'll add a tooltip that basically says it's being worked on. And as we add stuff on there going into phase 2, then we'll make it ungrayed, and then you'll be able to click on it, and you'll be able to start unlocking the doctrines as we add them. Now, because we've built a lot of foundational systems already in there for modifier stacks, some of the doctrine stuff is simply copy and paste of, we wrote a modifier system for melee damage, we want a modifier system for health, we wrote a modifier system for infection resistance. We take those systems, we rename them, we change the variables and the data types that go through them, we replicate and test them. It's pretty quick for some of these operations. So it's one of those things where like we're going to benefit from the time and the effort that we've put in on the first phase to be able to roll into the other phases pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. So that's one of the most important things that we kind of set out to do for this last 7-month span of time since January 6th, is to basically make sure that when we do build a system, it's taking into consideration now everything we know people want. Because I say this again, I say this a lot, is that if you look at the game historically, which I'll bring it up for people that, because I know there's a lot of people that are new, like I'll give you some context. Raptor Cepheusprotocol. Is that like, if I bring this up, which was 5 years ago to the date, and then you compare this to where we are now, it's night and goddamn day. In terms of basically like the way the game has changed, the way that it has matured, things that we've learned, and just the feedback that we've applied based off of like making it more open-ended, expanding the map, adding better UI, making it a little more fleshed out, maybe not as mobile gamey. So it's one of those things where like you figure as we've kind of alliterated and changed over the years, we've sought to basically just kind of like keep upping the ante. Keep improving things, keep changing things. There's videos on YouTube, people that want to see it themselves. Durvar sent it to me 2 weeks ago. He was like, hey, I was just looking up the game the other day, and I was like, man, like, you guys have come a long way since you guys released an early access 5 years ago. So you figure, yeah, I think that it has changed a lot, and it's going to continue to change. And what we released as in 2020 is no longer what the game is now. Any shape, manner, or form. In terms of basically like the concept of it is there, but it has evolved in terms of the civilian evacuation, the vehicles, the helicopters, the away and the defense teams, more open-ended, more company of heroes, more military sim. Then you bring in the operators. Now you have, the division. People wanted what the day before. That garbage game. So you figure it's one of those things where like we're trying to basically just kind of keep learning and evolving as we go. I know we've gotten criticism over biting off more than we can chew over the years, but from us, it's from a foundational standpoint. If we want to do all these things, they have to be baked in and implemented from the onset. You guys saw what happened in 2022 for 2024 when we would add on things of like really cool ideas like the vehicles or the helicopters or other stuff, but they weren't integrated tightly knit enough with the core foundation of the game. There were a lot of growing pains, there were foundational issues, and there were other things that presented themselves. We were like, okay, now that we've understood a lot, we've changed a lot, we need to take that knowledge, apply it into the co-op rebuild, reprogram the game from the ground up, because suffer no delusions. There's not a single line of code that is practically like one-to-one to what it was in Legacy. Like, we've redone everything from the ground up. The entire game was retooled. We used the old code for inspiration, and we redid everything. So it was one of those things where, like, I just want to stress upon that as we're leaving the end of phase 1, this is kind of the idea, the approach that we've taken and why it's taken so long. And it's also being conscious of people's feedback and criticism and seeing what we can do and what we can't do, and then post-stating that for the future. Because we'll have a post-mortem for phase 1 in about a week or two that reflects everything we've done, how far we've come, what's coming next, and just generally addressing the elephants in the room in terms of basically like what are we aiming for, what are we trying to do, because there's still a lot of confusion sometimes we get on Steam and when we get on Discord and whatnot, and we want to make sure that we take the time to address that and we just kind of course correct there where needed. So it's one of those things where just be aware of that. And you can see right now they're moving on to the next objective, so they're going to take that out and clear that out. Let me go ahead. And, oh yeah, there's the gas towers there. I have to fix that. That's something I have to, like, this was supposed to spawn here. Some kind of bug I have to resolve. And then, yeah, these circuit units are taking damage from the infection zone. So you can see right there, debugging. I was just making sure the zones are accurate and then they're updating based off of like what's going on. So that was just something that we've been doing and just kind of like making sure the zone collision was accurate and just kind of fleshing all that out. So they'll die in a couple of seconds and that'll just demonstrate what we've done with the gas towers and how all that works. Actually, you know what? That one was supposed to be here. I think the vector on the Y was flipped, so I'll have to fix that. I apologize if you can hear someone in the background. My microphone's super sensitive. But you can see now they're dead. So now that's held, and then secure right here. Let me enter your play. We made this area quite harder, and again, it's going to be contingent on some of the more special infected types coming in over the next couple of weeks as we're entering phase 2, so they can crash through these objects. Because the landscapables are going to be destroyable going into phase 2. We're going to make it to where like how we were prototyping with that in experimental is going to come back over. So vehicles, these objects, these fences. I know right now you guys hug those like a goddamn like care blanket, like your care, like your safety blanket. That's not going to last that much longer. Like as it goes, as we go into like phase 2, and we're adding vehicles, and vehicles need to drive through this wall. Vehicles need to be able to drive over this fence, crush these trees. The Juggernaut's going to be able to do it. The blow-up guys will destroy it. If they destroy next to it, it'll take health damage, and then it will destroy the object or chip away at it. So just keep in mind, that's going to kind of be the evolutionary flow as we're just kind of scaling up for putting in the vehicles, the Bradley, the Abrams, the Strikers, and all that. And one other thing I want to mention is that this is kind of highlighted here going into, before we start the Q&A section, is we're going to be putting it in a way where we start with the doctrines. So we'll do the passives, we'll do the new abilities, we'll do the new units, the structures, the progression tree, and then it'll be the airstrikes, and then it'll be the vehicles at the end. And it'll be the ground vehicles first. We'll get that flight model set up. We'll get everything set up there. We'll have you guys test it. We'll get the operators so they can drive. We'll get the operators so they can take over control from an RTS unit. They can pile into a Bradley or like a Humvee and take it off the Narya. And then that way you get that synergy where you can have your operators just driving around in a scout car, the Peregrine, or the Humvee with the open top and being able to shoot, or just being able to just do a patrol. So that way you can have it to where like you can have a team of Humvees that are just chilling maybe in this parking lot. You clear a space for it, and if you're going to lose, you just clear out an entrance here, and everyone just takes off in a convoy in the middle of an objective if they know they're going to lose it. Because there have been situations where we've been talking about this in the public Discord where it was like, hey, we need to be able, like, it's so desperately needed for vehicles for situations where you lose ironworks and you need to make that long trek. You need to make that trek here and there. So that was another reason why the map was built in the way it was built, so you can have that level of like extendability for it's large enough to accommodate the helicopters and the little birds and the strikers and the Hummers and the Bradleys and all that fun stuff. So I think it's really interesting when we get into that evolution, because I'm not going to give an estimate right now, but we're going to try and get to the vehicle part. The airstrikes have been done for half a year. We showed them like a year ago. There's probably some minor adjustments that Dimitri will have to do from a design standpoint as we start to implement them. Like in concept, it's one thing for an artist to make something, but it's another thing for a programmer to take that, implement it, and then add the nuance of randomness or control ability to make it to where you can predict where an object is going to go instead of just a proof of concept of an effect. So just keep in mind that's something that we're going to be that'll be like probably the meat and potatoes of this month is like a week just for the airstrikes and just making sure those are working at most. The doctrines and the passive stuff should be pretty quick because we built most of that. Like that system that Derek wrote in Legacy was brilliant. Like he wrote it in a way where it would work for modding because that was a really big. Derek comes from a modding standpoint, history. What was it? XCOM. So it was one of those things where like for him, it was important that we write the doctrines in a way where modders could potentially make their own mods for doctrines or new items altogether to be able to do that. So just keep in mind that's something that basically I have to kind of get with him, and we have to bring that system over from Legacy. And I think the hardest part for the doctrines is just building the UI and making it flow. Because we're looking at Sins of a Solar Empire 2 for inspiration on the sheet and the visual design, and having not only do you get requisition or like doctrine points from like killing, but you also get it passively by structures you can place in the world, and then you can upgrade the rate at which you get them. It's something we wanted to experiment with this time around, see how it's received, and then adjust accordingly. Because I think that was a really cool concept idea that they have in Sins of a Solar Empire 2, and I wanted to kind of experiment with it, do our own little flavor or twist on it, and then alliterate and adjust as needed. So we'll see how you guys like that, because that'll be one of the first thing we're doing is that doctrines. Is that the UI is done, and then it's doctrines first up, and then we'll have our proof of concept where we'll do the infantry tree. So if you look at the end of the year summary for 2024, you will see a full flow chart of everything that's planned, and then from there, you'll get an idea of like, okay, like this is what they're doing. They're starting from the top. They're skipping the middle, which is the vehicles. They're going down to the bottom, which is the utility. And then they're going back to vehicles, and then we're going to go back to airborne. Because technically, we're roping those together. There's an airborne doctrine, and there's a mechanized vehicle doctrine. So those are the two that we're working on just to basically flesh that out and get that to a point where everyone's happy. So again, if you have friends that have been waiting on the vehicles, you have friends that want to give feedback on the vehicles, we're going to try and make as big of a hoopla around that time so we can get real feedback. Get as many people on the Discord as possible talking about the vehicles they're handling from an operator standpoint of being able to drive it like Battlefield or Call of Duty to being able to do the RTS implementation of the pathfinding. And there will be some last minute changes. We're going to have to augment the formation system for the implementation of vehicles, but we've talked about our design goals and our design plans based off of previous podcasts you can find. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you can go back, you can go to the backlog, and you can see how we're envisioning Formations 2.0 in terms of the design approach we're taking this time around. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully, can you guys hear my background? Yeah, you can a little bit. So let me see. One second. Yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
It's time to hop off, guys.
Oh.
Dark is off.
My sister's crazy. She's visiting me. Ignore her. So you figure just keep that in mind for just the approach that we're taking when it comes to that. Let's see if I'm anything in a nutshell that I'm missing. Let me just check my notes, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A and just kind of go from there. Let me check. One more. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. This week was a lot of technical depth and a lot of foundational systems that we had to basically just kind of update a little bit more. Like the leveling up, finishing out the operator, doing the co-op testing for Half Moon Bay, and figuring out the design approach and the design direction based off of talking to people. I mean, honestly, like a lot of bug crashes. There's one crash, we know about it. we're trying to hunt it down and recreate it reliably. It is a random crash that can occur after wave 20 and increases in probability as you get closer to 40 to 50, which is the max wave. We're trying to hunt it down and get rid of it. It might be one we might have to spend like maybe Tuesday, because it's an issue with the fog of war system and the faction manager, and it's one of those things where basically we're going to be going back and ironing that out going into basically Tuesday-ish to kind of try and hunt that down. Either me and Derek might have to tag team that one for a couple of hours, because we have an idea. We've tried to patch it, but our way we were doing the unit registry for the RTS factions, where each one registers itself independently with the server host, and then they calculate their fog of war local host oriented. So then that way we could potentially have like other factions playing with their own fog of war. Is that system is baked in there from a foundational standpoint to potentially be able to support other factions that play against each other. Not making any promises in terms of longevity. We have enough on our table, but the system is built in a way where infected via CERC could be a thing by having it programmed in that way. But we need to go back and patch that system, because as the infected increase in number, something's going wrong with their deregistration, where they get deleted early and the system crashes because it's holding a hard reference in a thread or an asynchronous task. I think it's an asynchronous task. So we're going through, we have to hunt that down going into Tuesday. That is the last fatal crash that we're aware of, besides a random GPU crash that gets. That one's related to drivers and older video cards, but sometimes when you open the game, it can crash initially because your video card's being overwhelmed by the amount of data we're loading on the hub. So we'll go into that and we'll fix out. I'll have Dimitri looking into that going until Monday, Tuesday, as he's just kind of tuning up the hub, is adding in some HLODs and seeing if he can bring down some of the initial costs on that map, maybe stream it in a little over time. Maybe break it into like world partition chunks, so we only have to load small little subsets of Alcatraz just for that hub. We'll experiment. We'll get back to you guys, and we'll come back with the plan earlier next week, so we can just kind of make sure we're hitting that in the right way, and you guys are able to play it and not have any issues loading up the hub initially. Now, I noticed that Efren snuck in. Efren, is there anything you want to talk about for what you're working on before we come to Q&A? Let me move him to the audience. I noticed he snuck in, and he's been working on some of this stuff. I'll leave him to talk, and then from there, YouTube, Discord, line up your questions. Efren, is there anything you want to talk about for what you've been working on while we wait for questions to fill in? Because we're going to do 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we're going to cut it, our early podcast, and we'll be back next Saturday. So anything you want to throw in there?
On my side, just pretty much just working on polishing up Half Moon Bay, and if there isn't anything else to be done on there, I'll probably move on to trying to get more buildings set up, or more assets set up for creating new buildings, so we can get going on some new co-op maps and stuff like that. Get a little more variation as far as like the way they look. But currently, most of the work I've been doing the last week was just kind of repairing some of the stuff that's been going on in Half Moon Bay, as far as like collisions and just binder adjustments you've been having me do here
and
and
one
there.
of the most important things we're going to float this idea out to the community. We're going to kind of see what the mood is and just kind of adjust accordingly. But one of the things that we wanted to float out there is that Men of War mod was giving us the idea of maybe we should have a smaller map. And I was mentioning Krieg wanted to try making one. I think Meffrin wants to try making one now. Is making like smaller maps to experiment and see if people like them, or if they do want us to go this more bombastic, larger direction. So if I give you like an example, is like, say having a map that's like this size. And the idea is that you're defending like a center area here, and then you're pushing out from, say, you're getting hit from this. Oh, let me do a different color. You're getting hit from like this lane, this lane, this lane, and then you hold this pocket for as long as you can, and then you retreat to the next lane, and then you start getting hit from here, and here, and here, and here as you retreat. So that was something that we were looking at and seeing if people would be interested in something like that, like the Men of War idea. Because I wasn't sure if people wanted more smaller scale engagements as well. And those are pretty simple to make, where you make like a small little cutout of like San Francisco of like a 3 to 4 city block. And then basically you just kind of design small little scenarios where you have like the Men of War had like buses going this way and evacuating off map. But it always could be as simple as defending a fixed objective for a certain amount of waves, or we can try the bus idea. We already have civilian evacuations and helicopters and helipads and flares, so why not utilize them in a way that gives you guys a little more versatility in the scenarios you can play? Because one of the most important things from us is that we built the foundation with Horde. We have traditional Horde, and we have the Horde Rush. And one of the things with Horde Rush is that we could use that in a recontextualized or like simplistic manner. Where we're like, okay, you're holding an objective here, you're holding an objective here, and an objective here, and smaller little bite-sized areas, so it's a little bit more manageable to get around, and it's more infantry focused. So I'll float that idea here, and I'm just kind of curious what people have to say on the YouTube, on the Discord when we get to the Q&A, because then we could just have like a mass evacuation area for helipads that are just, people are flooding in like this. I think XCOM does that in Helldivers, where you have like people flooding in and you're just, Helldivers 2 does it. But you have like little people that are like flooding in and they have to run past you, go to the evacuation zone here. And that could be our own little like interesting take on it. Or you have like operators running around, RTS units running around, trying to keep the corral open. And then you have infected being flooded in every once in a while, small little map. So again, I'm going to float that. Tell us what you think. So is there anything else you wanted to open up for discussion, Efren, before we move to Q&A?
Not really. I mean, it's a pretty cool like idea. Also, because you can offer like a lot of scenario options. Kind of like that bus idea you threw out there. Kind of reminds me of that one level in World War Z where you have to
I know
escort a
exactly
bus
what you're talking about.
of people out of the
And the
zone.
Japanese missions.
So it kind of offers a lot of
it's a very common trope or a thing.
A lot of
So again,
possibilities.
let's move into Q&A. I see Phoenix raise his hand, so we're going to invite him up to speak. YouTube, we're waiting for your questions eagerly. All right, go ahead, Phoenix. You have the floor. Maybe he's dead. I saw some questions, so I'll fall back on those. Quively asks, once you enter buildings from operator mode, will it be a single interaction button and brought to hatch, or physically walking into the door? It's going to be like Fallout. You walk up to a door, you press a key, and it just teleports you after a couple seconds. Screen goes black. You go into a dev zone. You end up where you're going to be. All right, Phoenix, ask your question real fast. I'm going to jump back to Quively's.
You're good. Accept it in Discord. I actually have several ones, 6 of them, but 2 of them probably already answered. So the first one, will the operator build or heal faster than the engineers?
Not currently,
or the medics?
The operators are currently just first tier is assault level of building, second tier engineer level of building. So then that way, if you want to just only get field construction if you're an operator, you can spec 1 point into there. If you want to get the whole kit and caboodle, you do 2. We can look into that long term, but for right now, I'm going to leave it the way it is and just kind of see how it feels, and we'll adjust accordingly based off of feedback and just whatnot. What was your other questions?
Will there be a way to get more than 4 abilities? For like example, the healing, welding, cloak. Can you
Not
get
currently.
more of those?
We're gonna see. We're gonna see how people respond to it and adjust on that one, because you figure we think that 4 is fair, but you have a point. Is that you figure they're no. I talked to actually Michael and Krieg about that the other day, and they were saying is that's why you build multiple operators to fill different roles, so you have a team. If you have a jack of all trades units, you're not incentivized to experiment, to level up other characters, and to basically actually like build a deck.
Yeah, that would make them okay too.
So yeah.
My next one is, what will be the next map that y'all will work on?
It would be the map that we were talking about with Krieg and Efren previously, where he was showing us some inspiration and some ideas to experiment with from like Helldivers and like that other Man of War 2 assault mod. So something smaller, I think, that basically allows us to kind of weigh the pros and cons of like a smaller encounter, like what I was showing you guys in that drawing, and then this larger one. And then we're going to see what people like. Do they like the smaller ones? Do they want another big one? Maybe do a poll. And then at that point, do that. Because like we showed it off a couple weeks ago, but we have like a list of about 10 locations, and Efren has a couple of auxiliary ones he has. So we do have fallback plans. We want to at least get 3 to 5 maps of Horde maps in before we cut it and move the pandemic. And that buys me and Derek time to basically get phase 2 done and then start on phase 3. And if we get to phase 2 before they end phase 3, We're gonna have to be like, okay, like you have like another couple 2 weeks, because like conceptually, we'd make a map. We might even just convert this map to a pandemic version. It's beautiful for it. Do that as our prototype or our vertical slice, and that way it gives them a little more time to make a couple more horde maps. It'll be situational based off of just generally all the factors externally and just what's going on at the time, so we can make sure we're keeping a train, or keep it flowing, basically. Did you have any other questions before I jump back to Quively?
I have a few, but I can hold off.
One more, then I'll pop you out.
All right. So, I know you probably mentioned this before in the live stream, but I didn't hear you. Will there be civilians on a horde?
Right now, it's purely based off of the you and the infected. We could look into that long term, but for right now, we might just wait until a pandemic and then deal with that. Technically, if we end up doing the evacuation route, then you would technically get it on that map. Right now, we're going to keep it just fixed point defenses. Where you destroy something and then they move up. They destroy something and then they move up. Whether it be a tent, because the system's very robust. So it could be a trailer, it could be a truck, it could be anything. The same way I was able to make the LCAC be able to build units, our system is very adaptable and changeable now for gameplay scripting. So I could change that, but we're going to go on the current vector. We'll design the map on that idea. And then if we have the time, I'll cave and see if I can get one in there, but no promises just yet. Like I'm trying to keep the schedule as tight as possible to get to the meat and potato of pandemic, because it was like a Steam comment that I was reading yesterday. It was like it's almost a tease. The Horde's co-op, but pandemic isn't. And like I was explaining to him, it was done that way so we can do it manageably and be able to get all the core fundamental systems in and then get the pandemic, because that's what everyone bought the game for. So I'm very conscious about, let's build out the Horde, let's get some base underlying systems in there, but we really need to get the phase 3 and get pandemic going, and then we can kind of lolly-dally around and make some, like, use those systems that we've built from pandemic for the civilians and adapt them into other horde maps. Does that make sense? Bring that tech over, per se, because we've kind of earmarked civilians for only phase 3, so then that way we can do it and not have the stupid pathfinding issues and the stupid evacuation issues. You've seen it. You see it on people answer the issues every other goddamn day. So it's one of those things where like we're very conscious of it, and we don't want to do it again. But yeah, here, let me jump to Quively, and then I got to jump to redundant. So Quively asks, given infected can enter buildings and use hatches, will it be possible to spend cash of engineer barricade the door to barricade the building itself to slow down the infected from immediately entering through the hatch, the roof? I don't have an answer on that yet. Let me think about that one. Because every time I allowed to do it, Ford would barricade it to the point where the AI would never be able to get to him. So if I did that, it would have to be a prefix system where you click on a point and you weld something like in Call of Duty Zombies. And it's not something that players are allowed to build. Because if I allow players to build on that close to the doors, they bug the hell out of the pathfinding intentionally. So they don't realize they can go up there. So it's like one of those things where it's like they build like 30 rows of Hescos upon 30 rows of Hescos, and then they have a turret all the way at the end. It's like, that's not even fun anymore. Like, so if I were to do that, I'd probably go the Call of Duty Zombies approach, but I don't have an answer on that yet. Not yet. Next question. Once doctrines are in, who will have control over choosing which one is bot? Will it be host only or vote or anyone? Anyone. And then that'll tie into the control modes. Well, we'll have it to where you can choose only the host can do it or anyone can do it. So that way you'll have like a special option that are just for doctrine upgrading. So little Timmy doesn't join the game and spend all your points, even though you've been saving for a Moab. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants that. So, but that's also why you have passwords and you kick people that are being dicks. But that'd be the general idea. UI question. Will it be possible to add color markings to the health bar of units and operators that will show maximum potential damage loss from damage over time sources like acid? This could allow us to know if acid will kill off a unit without treatment or be able to survive extra moments. Hold on. Let me write that down. I wrote that down. I'll talk to Derek about that on UI next week. That's a good idea. Okay, next question. Juggernaut question. Will it be possible that they could stun, throw around units as say ragdolls from Helldivers, as this is their threat to be kept, but they aren't an instant one-hit kill, or they'll be large telegraphing? We're going the Monster Hunter approach of our huge Monster Hunter fans. So we're going the telegraphing route, and we're going with the interoperability to a certain degree where they can hit you and slam your units to ragdoll them. Wait till I get to that point, and then I'll cook a couple of builds, and you and I can playtest it, and then we can just see where it goes. In terms of, I don't want to make them the end all where they just like excruciatingly painful, but I have to find like the balance there of like they're just not like the Leviathan now. But yeah, I get what you're saying. That's something I'm going to experiment with, and when I have that 2 to 3 day sprint, obviously, yeah, you're a Patreon, so I'll probably be bugging the shit out of you and everyone else on the public Discord, just on the playtest tag, and be like, hey, I got a new Juggernaut build. You guys feel like crying tonight? Great, let's go do it right now. So now it is redundant, and then I gotta check YouTube. So redundant, go, and then I gotta jump on YouTube.
Just to check, am I fairly clear on my mic? All right. So with abilities, which this I understand before I ask this wouldn't be something right now, but some of our abilities change and make the operator dynamically more powerful in different ways, like the 2 tiers of construction, like some potential cooldown things with further stacking. Do y'all have any plan at any point to, as the abilities evolve, to make different tiers of level of them and make more points needed to get to each level with specking based on the power they represent
system, yeah.
At any point?
Yeah. So, sorry to interrupt you, but the core fundamental of it is that by adding it to the engineer, that allows us to adopt or embrace the inspiration that we've gotten for Battle for Middle-earth 2 Hero Creator, where the idea is that we can add on like the tactical cloak you can shoot during it, whether it be RTS or TPS. You can have a longer duration, a lower cooldown. So those are things that we're looking at long term. And I think that those systems are going to be baked in phase 2, is that we'll find like small little tidbits here and there as we get ideas, as we talk to people, as we do play tests, see what people are saying, maybe sneak in a level here, or do a new ability there, just to kind of see what makes sense. Because we've gotten some people talking on public Discord. Damn, I forget his name. He was talking about a grapple gun. He was talking about a flamethrower. He was talking about there was something else, a drone. It's like Division that you can send around, look around. It could shoot, it could attack people to scout with. Those are different ideas people were throwing at us for the operators, and we're not against any of them. It's just the game is primarily an RTS game, so I'm very conscious about going too deep in the weeds right now. And there's so many moving wheels. So we've established the foundation. We have a beautiful foundation to build from. The game is not going to be done. It's not like done to us for a long time in terms of features and the tool set and things that can keep evolving, like Stellaris. So it's one of those things where like nobody says it's done and we can never come back to it and add more ability. So just keep in mind those are really good ideas. And with the engineer ability, that's the first foundational step for being able to do what you're talking about. Do you have any other questions? Oh, here you ran away. That's all the questions there. Let me go to YouTube. Black Hawk asks the question on YouTube. I have a question. Can the operator be a support ammo giver like in Battlefield? So like an ammo runner. That wasn't on our actual initial list. Let me write that down and get back to you on that one. That would be interesting. BF 584. Little reference. Okay, let me get back to you on that one. That's not a bad idea. Let me talk to some people and see what that would entail. And if it's going to, we might have to earmark that for maybe sneaking that in the middle of phase 2. Or doing it in phase 3 as like a nice little quality of life change, just to add a little more versatility. Because one of the biggest things we want to do for the operators, whether it be you're playing an RTS or TPS, is have it to where you incentivize to make new characters, level them up, to build teams of them that operate from 6 to 8 man fire teams, whether you're playing and controlling them yourself, giving them to your friends to play as. Because keep in mind, this is an important part of this. Nobody says you have to build the operator and you play as them. If you could make 6 operators, give them to your friends like to play Call of Duty, let them grind them out, And as long as you're still in the session, you're getting all of that XP. And then you can go back to the thing hub, customize them, kit them out, give them back to your friends to play another session, and let them, do all the work if they don't want to deal with it or whatever. So it's like, we have to kind of figure out however you want to interact with the systems, or if you just want to have everyone make their own operators. Let's see. So what else do we have here for questions on Discord? We have like 5 minutes, moment it starts to die down. What else do we have here? Dawn of the Dead, that's what it was. It's prototype inspired. That's what it was, Narc. So Narc is saying he would like to have a smaller mainstream map. It's more like combat focused, more smaller, like block-to-block fighting. So again, if anyone agrees or disagrees, feel free to drop your opinions in either chat. I'll be logging it, and I'll be making a poll for it soon. Phoenix asks, will there be building interiors? No, only in the campaign. It's out of the scope of what we're able to do as an indie team. Let's see. Redundant wants to bump a question. Would it be desirable of air or a chance for one hit kills or a chance for a check is red? I don't get your question, Redundant. I want to bump question 5. Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay. For Max's question about having lights in the vehicles, no, for the time being. I talked to Dimitri about having that, but right now it's on a wish list based off of his current backlog. Keep in mind that for the gameplay settings, one of the things that Derek's going to be putting in while I'm doing the bug fixing and everything else is he's going to be putting in the gameplay options so you can designate a primary and a secondary color. So when you join a session, you can do pink or purple or green or red or whatever you want. And obviously, it's first come, first serve. So if the host has red and client 2 has red, it's going to fall back on his secondary color. And if the secondary color is somehow still taken, it'll pick a random color. So the custom game options is going to be getting a huge overhaul and a liveliness pass just to make it look a little more fleshed out and just to address some long standing. So like here, if I show you really quickly, this is the current mock-up. There'll be some changes between here and now. It's simple. It's to the point. It shows you a description. We got rid of those ugly hover tips that we had. We just have it to where if you hover or click on something, it shows up on the right panel, like most modern games do. And that's the direction we're going in for the UI that he'll be doing next week around Tuesday, Wednesday. One of the other things that I will show, and I am not happy with this UI just yet. I think it looks ugly. We'll keep alliterating on this. This might be a point of contention here and there, even as we're working as the doctrines. Is figuring out the final design for the squads menu. Technically, it's serviceable, I guess, but we'll see. So that's something else that we're kind of like prototyping and kind of getting visualized and designed from a voice and the concept from Winter and Janari. So we'll just see how that goes and just kind of keep alliterating as we go. Any other questions? Controller support for the Steam Deck. Who asked that? JP30. When is there controller support and controls for the Steam Deck? Yes, in general. Thinking about that one. Conceptually, the UI is done now. You're going to have to use a keyboard and a mouse for at least a couple more months. I would say the end of phase 2, because you figure I want to get the rest of the major elements in phase 2. Technically, we should do it at the end of phase 3, because that's when all the elements are in, all the unique UIs are in. But we could do the Destiny approach of UI with a mouse. The analog sticks acts as a mouse in place of having like this, because there's too many UIs in the game. I'll have to play Company Heroes on console and a couple other games just so we can flesh that out a little bit more. But yeah, I would say it's going to be at least to the end of phase 2 minimum, because you figure we need to get the RTS, like the standard keyboard and mouse, get the keybinds working. Technically, you could keybind it, or you could use a macro on the Steam input layer to basically be able to redirect that, like how they make older games like Prototype work. You could do that. For the time being, Steam Deck is not the utmost priority. It's going to become one because we need to add controller support, but there's too many things going on at this point where we can't do that yet. Because if we do it, we need to do it correctly, like how we had it in experimental, where we had new control modes, and we need to do a better radial, like Company of Heroes, and a couple other things that we need to do just to make it to where you can play the entire game in Steam Deck, and it does not require you to have a keyboard and the mouse. So if I do it, I want to do it all the way through, and I don't want to do a dirty kind of basic implementation we did on experimental and normal. Take it a little bit further. So in my mind, I want to get everything else done up to phase 3 ideally, and then focus on that in its entirety for 2 weeks. So then that way it's done, every system's in, and there's no weird, we put in pandemic and then part of the options don't work and it's Steam Deck. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I would say you have to wait a little bit longer. You might have to just plug in a keyboard and the mouse for the time being, but it is on our agenda. It's something we're going to do. I have a Steam Deck just so I can make sure everything works on there. So just bear with us a little bit longer on that one. Will the setting be worked on? Mainly audio. So audio is not going to be touched until the end of phase 3. Is the idea that that's going to be something we need to work on going into improving the sounds and the visuals and all that. Like right now we're getting 1-ups on visuals as we go, but the audio is going to be when we have the budget. So I'm kind of waiting until things are a little bit more fleshed out from the gameplay standpoint to where we start to get a little more higher revenue. And then I can invest that into Jacob so he can take, because we're not even using meta sounds, which is their version of 3D directional audio and a bunch of other nice sound dispersion crap that gives you the quality of close to the Battlefield quality or Call of Duty quality of actual really good sound simulation. But it comes down to resources and money. And if I have to choose between game design and the level design and everything else, I have to choose those. And then audio is just going to be the placeholders and the sounds we've had historically for years. And then we'll get to that point, as the layer on icing on the cake. But yes, in the grand scheme of things, that's something that's on my list before we leave early access is doing an audio pass and doing some better sound fields and whatnot and using meta sounds. Let's see, any other questions before we wrap this up? So the Dark was suggesting the Oakland Bray Bridge and the downtown San Francisco main road would make a good map. Getting pushed back towards the bridge as buses drive across the helicopter area. So that's a cool idea. I will write that down. Everyone's here, so I'm sure he heard it. And it was recorded, so we can come back to this. But we'll do San Fran as the Oakland Bay Bridge. That's the Bay Bridge. Because we have that area conceptually blocked out for the other map too. Okay.
Do we really want to use sections of the map that we're already going to have in the game?
I mean, he was suggesting why not have it to where you get pushed from the Presidio, I think it's the Presidio, to the Oakland Bay Bridge. You're trying to lead evacuation buses or other stuff out of the city. So you're trying to keep that lane by Chrissy Fields to the bridge secured by the fort. And then if you lose completely, you get pushed into the bridge and you die. Because they would overrun the cordon basically and go and escape into the hills up there, the foresty region. But that's not a bad idea. So I'll write that down, and we can discuss that and see, because technically we have all that area blocked out. So yeah. Okay. So any other questions before we wrap this up, boys and girls? I'll sit around for another couple of minutes and then I gotta run. Let's see. Oh, I know what you're talking about. The Oakland Bay Bridge is what you're talking about, not the Golden Gate Bridge. That's the Oakland Bay Bridge. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay. But both of them actually are really cool ideas. Either or would work. We have both of those areas blocked out for the pandemic map. So it's not...
Yeah, I don't think we have any playability on those bridges yet, so that them alone would be a good map, because I don't think we have a connection to either other of the other
No, the
side of
nature
those
was the
bridges.
last one working on those 2 bridges. He did an early block out, and then we had to cut it to move back onto like, well, the other content. There was a lot of collision and other stuff we had to do. Let's see. We'll come back to that on Monday. Because you figure, I would say around Monday, Wednesday, and next week, you're going to be scratching the bottom of the barrel for stuff to do on the Half Moon Bay map. Everything else that has to be done is me for the climbing and mapping the zones. I may need some help, but it's going to be trivial. And then at that point, it would make sense for you to just kind of start prototyping another map. Maybe get Krieg to help out if he still wants to. And see if he can come up with some ideas and visualize them. Okay, well then we're going to end there. Stay tuned for Steam. I'll try and put a patch out either today or on Sunday for you guys to play on the public. Let me see. Thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate you guys coming and just kind of seeing what's going on, sharing your feedback on YouTube, on the Steam store, on Discord. If you have anything that wasn't answered, feel free to leave it on the YouTube video and I'll try and answer it there. You know, I try to at least do it or grab them or save them for next week. I'm going to try and put up a website that allows you guys to just kind of put questions into a roulette website, and then I can pick them rapid fire for when people can't come kind of deal, but they'll know their question got answered at least, so they can go back and know what video to watch. So I'll try and work on a system for that. I know there's a lot of people that ask really fucking great questions when we're in a Discord channel, like on voice, just chilling, but they can never make it to the podcast because their work schedule or their family schedule or any other number of things. So keep in mind that is something that I'm working on. If you want to consider supporting the team additionally for just the initial purchase, which we love you guys for, consider checking out our Patreon, buying one of the support packs on Steam for the chemos, for the vehicles, checking out the book on Amazon or on Steam. Keep in mind that one of the big things we're going to have to do is we're going to port over those skins to experimental. So, all of that's going to come over again. I mean, I can't give you the exact date, but that'll be one of the things we're going to be working on. So your skins just work and they all come over to the rebuild. So we're not going to, you just keep that in mind. I know I'll get that question eventually. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and you guys have a great weekend.